at some point in time, everybody, we go through things that shake us emotionally. And these are some of the things that you would have experienced that really shook you emotionally to be at that point of being the lowest. When we're at that point, what would you tell that person when they're at that lowest point, when they've been so shaken emotionally?
Don't give up. It is not the end. That is not the end. Fight. One part of my book, I use the word fight so many times. I just say fight. Keep fighting. Do not give up. From the time you give up, and some of us would have given up at times, but those who've given up would have realized at some point and would have continued, that is, would have realized that you cannot stop fighting. Don't give up. Where you are is not the end.
Good day. Welcome to the program today. I'm Jennifer Jabbar. On today's program, we're touching on some very important issues that should be of interest to everyone in our society, both in Guyana and in the diaspora. We're talking about mental health and chronic depression. Joining me on the program today is media personality, veteran journalist, broadcaster, and so forth. He's been in the media for a number of years now. You're well aware of him, Neaz Subhan. He would have been with CNS, Channel 6, NCN, the Government Information Services, TVG, and many other TV stations as well. As part of the acting, he has been an actor in Guyana, the Cultural Center. You would have seen him perform on many programs there. So Neaz and I will be discussing the issue of chronic depression and the road to recovery, and how Neaz has been coping with some personal struggles of his own. Neaz, welcome to the program, and thank you so much for coming today to share your story. And I must tell you, I admire and I commend your courage for coming out to speak on this very important issue, but it still is a bit touchy in our society, especially in the Guyanese society. So I just want to say that up front, that I want to say thank you to you for coming on the program and talking about this issue openly.
I want to thank you, Jenny, to reaching out to me, because when I placed my indication of what I want to talk about, you reached out very, very quickly. So I want to thank you for allowing this conversation, because like you, I believe that while it's difficult, it is necessary.
Yes, thank you for that. So tell me, how has the road to recovery been like for you and to bring you to this point where you're at right now?
Recovery was not easy, and it was over 4 years. I had an initial period where I denied that I was ill mentally. I denied that. I could not bring myself to accept that. Actually, someone that you would have worked with and who was an authority on health at some point told me that suicidal thoughts and depression and so on are mental health issues. And I refuted that person. I doubted him. I said, no way, it cannot be. How in my rational mind? And I use an example. I said, look, I'm working, I'm happy. I'm not saying me, but someone is working, happy, have a family. And then they're told suddenly you're fired. And that person at that moment, knowing his or her challenges financially and everything else, I decide, look, for whatever reason, I'm going to do something that is not advisable. Was that person mentally ill? Right? And we had this conversation. Of course, I was ignorant of all of the scientific things and interventions and classifications and all of that. I was totally ignorant. But then when it actually hit me at some point, based on what I was going through, and I realized that I was not myself, and I realized that I was getting to a point where I no longer wanted to live, um, it dawned upon me that, you know what, that doctor was right. He was right, and maybe I needed to start thinking in a different direction. But that in itself was not easy to do. To change course was not easy to do.
So did it start with you having like sleepless nights, and how did the thoughts begin?
In the book that I wrote, I went searching along my life's path to see what happened within the last 4 years if this was just something that just happened on its own or it was linked to some event or events along my life's path to see whether there were some things that were always happening that I did not pay any attention to. I was surprised what I found. I was really, really surprised to see that a lot of things happen. And I mentioned in one page that depression was not a word that we heard of when we were small. We didn't know about depression. We know about playing, and if you're sad, well, you're a little, you're girly if you're a boy or whatever the case may be. But then when you trace back, then you realize that while it may not have been the word depression that you knew of, something was wrong. Something was wrong. And I saw a kind of a pattern that was going up and down. But during that journey, there were times that I wanted to fight and I did fight, but there were times that I didn't want to fight and I gave up. And there were times when, and I'm being brutally honest, there were times when I just wanted to die and I cried for death. I literally cried and begged for death. In 1988, I was hospitalized for about 30 days. 2 weeks I was unconscious, not necessarily mentally or what do you say in terms of your nervous system. I knew what was happening, but my body was unresponsive. And nobody expected me to live. No one. Doctors, the doctors at the time at the hospital, at the private hospital, they sought the expertise of another senior doctor from another hospital. And I heard doctors saying, they didn't know that I could have heard what they were saying. I heard a doctor said, look, if he passed tonight, he's going to make it. If not, he's not going to make it. And my dad is a carpenter. My dad started to cry. And my dad said, look, at least I can make his coffin as a father. And nobody expected me to live, Jen, even my own self. But I lived. And I keep asking myself, why? When I wanted to die, I wasn't. When I was expected to die, I didn't. What was happening in my life that was going on? But even in those circumstances, I resisted, I fought. But I couldn't explain logically what was happening. I couldn't bring myself to believe that I was suffering, other than the fact that I was medically ill, that I was suffering from any form of depression. And it was someone that you and I know. I'm going to call his name. It was Nazim Hussein, who visited me one day, and we had a conversation. And within half hour, he called me. He said, Niaz, are you okay? I said, yeah, you just left me. We had a conversation. He said, no, 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 no. Are you okay? I'm seeing signs, I'm seeing certain things that are not very encouraging. And by then I think I did a good job of hiding it, really hiding it. But because Nazim was like, or is like a brother to me, I felt I couldn't lie to him. And I said, look, I'm not okay. And, I'm talking about it, I'm getting emotional. I said, I'm not okay. And he said, okay, look, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And he took me to Desiree and we had some conversation. But even then, Jennifer, I was still in denial. I was still in denial. And it was at the point when I felt that literally going to pull the trigger. I asked myself, how would it be reported in the media? Other than the fact it was going to be a suicide, what are they going to attribute as the reason for the suicide? And pardon me, this was just after the 2015 elections. And the first thing dawned upon me is that they will say, or could say, that because the PPP lost the elections and I was working under that government, for some reason, I took my life. And I felt I could not have allowed my family to live with that stigma because that was not the truth. It wasn't because of that I would have, if I were going to do something, that wasn't the truth. So then I started to panic. I started to, I think I was heading for a nervous breakdown. What do I do? I knew I didn't want to live. That was for sure. That was the surest thing, that I didn't want to live. And I remember driving home in some evening, and if you when you get a chance to read the book when it's out, There was a particular bridge on the east bank of Demerara that I eyed up, and I said, that is where I'm going to. That's one option of just driving into that bridge at breathtaking speed. So I had it planned. I haven't had anything planned, but what I didn't have planned is how would it be reported? And because I didn't want to have that political stigma attached to my children, I said, let me find someone that I can really, really unload on. And I called someone who were not friends with me. I just know the person casually. But what I know is that the person shared a completely different political view from mine. So we were not in the same sphere of common politics. And more so, he was the head of a very influential organization that had links to the US. And I felt that by telling somebody who is not associated with the PPP, if I were to really drive into that bridge, if I were to really pull that trigger, here was somebody who could have said, look, this has nothing to do with politics. And because it's somebody who is not from the PPP, I felt it would have had more credibility to dispel any notion that my planned death might have been because of politics. Of course, the person was very shocked when I called and reached out, but he listened. And I cried bitterly, Jenny. I'm not ashamed to say it. I cried, and I couldn't help it because then I realized what was it that I was about to do and what would have been the consequences. And I just needed something to hold on to, someone to hold on to. And I think that person was more happy or happier than I was that I reached out. And immediately that person made a few calls and got, I don't know, it's a psychologist, I think, or psychiatrist from the US. And that person worked with me for about 3 or 4 months every day, free of cost,
Wow. Every
to
day.
help me every day.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that that person was there for you in that moment and reached out in such a big way to help you, and that, that really is the reason you're here today with us. So, and because you're also a fighter from what you said, at one point you were feeling that you didn't want to live, but at the same time you were fighting that you do want to live, and then you were worrying about all these things. Do you think that being in the public's eye, being in the media, would have contributed in any way to the feelings that you were having?
Yes, and it worked both ways because being in the public eye, there was also a sort of pressure. There was pressure, the so many eyes upon you, and I think in some way, because I knew if what I was thinking, I had gone through with it, those eyes would have been very, very focused on my family and why, and I would not have been able to control. Nobody could have controlled what could have come out. And I think in many ways, Jennifer, me thinking like that is what started the process. I didn't even think I needed help. I was just thinking that I just want somebody to know the truth. So if they're going to report that I committed suicide because of politics, I just wanted somebody to stand up and say, hey, no, this is not true. And that person would have been credible in the sense that it wasn't somebody close to me. That's how I thought. But in doing so, I think that was the window, and I'm saying window because in my mind, it was just a small opening at that time that allowed for the inflow of help and advice and so on to help me. And that took a while in itself because, first of all, I had to bring myself to accept that I am mentally ill, that I need to get help, and I am getting help, and I need to accept this help. And what that in itself wasn't easy. It took a long while for me to realize that, you know what, I just need to take a step back and allow this process to work. And I'm happy I did.
At any point, did you feel like you were being a burden?
Oh,
Because
yes. Oh, yes. I mean, it wasn't just one issue. I mean, but after the elections, it became very difficult to support my family, and I don't know, I might get flack for saying this, I don't know, but it became very difficult.
Mhm.
There were days, I'm telling you, that I could not have afforded to put gas in my vehicle.
Mhm.
I could not have afforded to put gas in
Mhm.
my vehicle. And I had kids in school. I have a wife. Um, you hear things as a husband. She understood that it was a new or a different time, that things were different or things have basically shrunk. So there was no pressure. But we're humans, you have a wife, there are needs that the house must have, the children must have. And by hearing all of those stuff and knowing that I could not have fulfilled it, made it worse. I felt worthless. I felt emasculated by the situation. And all of that contributed for me going down a path of driving that car into that bridge or the other option which I had, So it was tough. It was really, really tough. I don't think a man or woman, depending on, can really stand the pain of knowing that your spouse or children need stuff and you cannot really provide that. You have to find ways. So I had to start to borrow. My car was giving me a lot of trouble. And what do I do? And in all of this, Jennifer, and I was telling a colleague earlier, if you think all of that, what I said was difficult, to me, the more difficult thing was to hide it from people because of the stigma that is attached to the
Mhm.
embarrassment that you face from some people,
Mhm.
because not everybody are caring, not everyone is caring,
Mhm.
and but they are caring people.
Mhm.
And the fact that I had to go to work, I had to smile. The most difficult thing was, if I had to rate one thing that was most difficult to do, was to fake that smile and carry that smile. That
Mhm.
wasn't easy. That was like weight on my body that I had to move with my muscles in my face. There was so much weight just to bring that smile, to hide it from people. And that
Mhm.
wasn't easy, but I had to do that. I
Mhm.
had to do interviews. I was still working in the media. I had to interact with people. I had staff under me that I had to guide. I remember doing a play or two during that time. I had to learn lines. I had to go and rehearse. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy.
Mhm.
And in retrospect, if I had to advise people, I think to avoid that kind of weight on your system, on your mind, is try to get help. Try to get help. You save yourself a lot. But mind you, if I had to put number two as to what is most difficult, it would have been bringing yourself to accept that you need help and then
Mhm.
seeking that help.
Mhm. Yeah, I really want to thank you for that as well. Two things, to not be in denial and to also for people, for you to be able to reach out to people. People have to be more welcoming, being more to have that support network so that you can open up to them to say that okay, this is what I'm going through, and we need to have more people to be around us to say, this is a shoulder that you can lean on. You can come to me and talk to me. And I believe that's what is lacking in our society, especially in Guyana. We have such a high rate of, suicide and people being at risk for suicide as well. And these all stem from, not being able to talk about these issues, especially in the Indo-Guyanese community. We don't talk about these issues. There's a lot of things we don't talk about. It's just taboo to talk about it. And so one of the things that you really touched on there is to have that support, not being able to shield yourself, to hide behind the tears and the sadness, and to be able to come out to say, hey, this is what I'm going through. Can you help me, or do you know where I can seek help? Mhm.
And you know and you're right, but what can make it a bit easier? You know your husband knows you. If you were to come home one day and he has a certain disposition and you're seeing something different, okay, so one day you may say he's tired. I'm just being hypothetical, yeah?
Right.
One day he may be tired, or next day he might whatever. But if you see that pattern is continuing, then I would want to assume that the natural thing to do is say, hey, there's something wrong. You can talk to me. You can confide in me. I'm seeing, I know you. I'm seeing that you're different. Don't be afraid. And I
Mhm.
think friends, family who know people, and if you're seeing, must be able to spot those signs and be able to make an assessment that you're seeing difference in this person. Of course, some of us can really hide it. I mean, I'm from a theater background. You know,
Mhm.
I'm trained. I'm a trained actor, so
Mhm.
some of us can hide it very well. But I still believe in hiding it. People may be able to spot a little bit of deviation from your norms. And I'm hoping that for those who are looking at your program here today, two things. One, to echo what you said, don't be me. Don't be me as what I did. I hid it, and I hid it well, really hid it well, and it hurts. It pained. I'm saying don't be me.
Mhm.
If you know that you're like that, reach out. And I'm also saying to the other side, if you know that person, reach out to, ask a question, be sensitive about it because you don't want to intrude, but ask the question, so that if both were to work, I think we can be able to be more useful and more helpful to the many people who are suffering there in silence.
And Nazim Hussein is such a good person. And although you're both veteran actors, you weren't that good to hide it from Nazim.
Yes,
Nazim picked it up.
he was trained too.
Right. So I'm really glad that Nazim picked up on those signs. He saw those warning signs and he picked up on it. And I'm happy that that you're here today with us. I want to ask you, in Guyana, you see the stars. Here in New York, we don't get to see the stars. But when you look up at the sky and you see those stars, how do you feel to be in existence?
Life, I've learned from my experience, and if you don't mind, if I could use another parallel example, if you don't mind. When I was in the COVID ward, I spent 49 days in a small room that was sealed from the inside with plexiglass so that nothing could get out, nothing could come in. I could see out, but nobody can see in. Small room, maybe 15 feet by 6 feet or something like that. 40, 49 days. And I looked out of the window and I saw the birds, but I couldn't hear them. I saw the vehicles passing, but I couldn't hear them. And how I yearned to be outside, to be that bird, to be in one of those vehicles. And that exacerbated what was going through my mind. Even though I was healing before COVID, I hadn't gotten it over 100%, my depression, that is, but I was in a much better place when COVID hit. But in that 49 days, a lot of things start rushing back. And I'm using the word rushing as a waterfall coming back and drowned in you and trying to tell you all kinds of stuff. And then I realized the value. We, in my small days, I would have pelted that bird. I would have pelted that bird, right? But I wish to be that bird. I then value the freedom that that bird had, that he could have fly anywhere he wanted to. I value the fresh air because in the hospital, you were not breathing fresh air. There were many people on ventilators. There were some were on oxygen. Thankfully, I was only on oxygen for about 1 hour or so one day. So you value that. You value life. And when you value life and you come to the realization that, you know what, life is not assured. The surest thing is death. But in as much as you have it, I learned to have a renewed value to those things. So when I look into the star, I would have given anything to come outside and look for those stars in the night, to see it from the outside. I couldn't see it from the inside, right? Well, I could have seen it from the inside, but not as clearly. But I would have done anything to be on the outside to see those stars. So the value of being in the company or in proximity to the stars, I cannot put a value to that. It's priceless. And I think you can only value that You can only value that, and I don't mean this to be insensitive to anyone, but in my case, speaking personally, because we take so many things for granted in our everyday life. We wake up, we breathe, we brush our teeth, whatever. You don't think about those. Those are natural things. But then when you went through what I went through, and I'm sure there are many people who have gone through what I've gone through, some even worse, you get to value life and you value those stars.
In my readings, when I would have read about the Buddha Siddhartha and his road to enlightenment, when he would have sat under the Bodhi tree, and one of the things was when he was learning about why we suffer, why humans suffer, one of the things he talked about was one of the things is that to live in the present moment, to be in that moment, to experience life happening in the moment, for us to be happy. You know, do you live now in the moment?
I don't think I do it totally for the moment because it was never a part of my characteristic just to live for the moment. Because um, people like me who are in the media, you are in the media, you see time move in at a different speed because you plan ahead. You have a calendar for the next 3 months, 6 months. These events will be happening. You'll be planning. So somehow you're consumed with what is going to happen in the future, and you're worried about things not happening or going the way it should have gone. I don't know if that answered it, but I've never found myself living just for this moment. A big chunk of my life, especially during the period of depression, I might not have even been in the moment. I would have been stuck somewhere in some dark place that was no way close to that particular moment. But if I were to say this in the sense that I'm happy that I'm in the moment, I'm happy that I'm here, I'm happy I can share this moment, I'm happy I can share it with loved ones, friends. I'm always humbled by people's outpouring and of their comfort. When I was in the hospital, Jennifer, I had hundreds of people texting me. 90% of them I don't know, never heard from them. There were people from India, there were people from Indonesia, there were people from America, Canada, Antigua texting me. I don't know these people. Some of them are just asking for how to help. Some of them had their own COVID challenges that they were facing, and they just wanted somebody to talk to. And I'm always humbled by that because I never thought that my story that I would have put out there would have been able to touch so many people. Like when I put up that image last night, I never envisaged that it was going to cause so much attention from so many people from various parts of the world, including yourself. And 24 less than 24 hours after, I'm having this conversation with you. So I think in that context, I'm in the moment for now.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, and I'm happy that your story is reaching so far and wide across, across the globe. To know that people from all these countries are reaching out, which means that even with COVID and now with this story that you're going to share, that I'm sure it's going to impact a lot of lives. Um, what advice would you give to people who are presently at risk for suicide and might be looking at the program?
I'm not very good with advice, but the very first thing is that I would say is that accept where you are. You have to accept that you're at a place that you can only get better from if you really want to have a positive intervention. And before I go further than that, Jenny, when I was hosting Guyana today, I can tell you this. At some point when we reported on suicide, I was on air and I would say that people are selfish. Why would they do that? And I would have said it publicly. And it was after when I was experiencing what I was experiencing, then I realized how insensitive I was, how wrong I was, how cruel I was to people because I did not understand their position. That doesn't mean that I'm saying that you must do that. I'm trying to prevent you from not doing that. It's because I understand the forces that engulfs you in your being. I am saying the advice is that despite those forces, despite how dark those forces are, despite how helpless you feel, you have to find the strength to find the strength. And I will repeat that. You have to find the strength to find strength because it's not easy to pull yourself to find that strength. So that's the first thing you have to do. Strengthen yourself to get strength. And when you get strength, the doctor asked me one day, is there a reason for me to live? And I said, no. Then he asked me how many kids I have. And I said, five boys. He said, well, you have 5 reasons to live. And that's just your children. You have a mother, you have a father, you have a wife, you have I have 2 stepdaughters. He said you can add all of those. Those are other reasons to live. And I'm going to advise people that in those dark moments when you're so down and you think that, and you know that in your mind, you seem convinced that there is no tomorrow. I'm suggesting to you, look around. Just take a look around into the room. See whose photos are on the wall. Think of who may be outside in the yard playing. Listen to those songs and let those songs and those images tell you that there are reasons to live. But it's not easy, Jenny. But at least try, do it. Give yourself the chance to listen. Give yourself the chance to look at those images and to be able to say, look, can you really do that without hurting them? They will be hurt. There will be so much pain in that. So, to make a long story short, find strength. Think of think of your family. Think of their future. Think of your role in that family, and think of your own self. That when you're down, sometimes the only other direction to go is up. And think of that the fact that if you're down and you're down at the bottom, you can go up. You can go up and reach out. And in the book, I use terms like stretching out your hand metaphorically. Stretch your hand out. Somebody will be there, I'm sure, to be able to hold it and help you up. And do not lose hope. Do not lose hope. I lost hope. I'm going to tell you that. And I don't think those persons who went through what I went through would tell you that they didn't lose hope. I felt hopeless, completely hopeless. But as I said, as time went by, and I realized that, you know what, I didn't want things to happen for a particular reason. And by thinking like that, I start to see things a little bit different. And I'm telling people, you know what, whatever you can hold on to, whatever metaphorical straw there is, as fragile as it may appear to be, hold on to that straw. Hold on to it. That might be the one thing that can cause you to come back. The title of my book is Coming Back. That might be the thing that causes you to start going back in a direction that will regress your situation and put you on a path to see things from a different perspective. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but for me, if people were to allow themselves the create that environment in their minds to hear those songs, see those images, I think it goes a very far way.
So, coming to the book, you said the title is Coming Back. What stage is it at now? I know you're trying to get it published, but let's talk a bit about the book. What led you to write the book, to share your story in this way?
Actually, it was an advice from the doctor. He said people do different things as that has therapeutic value. And yeah, when he heard my background and I won Best Playwright in 2013 and so on, he said, write a book, just write a journal, just document your stories and see if that makes you comfortable. So for me, writing was a way of healing, of being able to put down my thoughts, my story, but at the same time, it healed because as I write, I'm seeing where I was and I'm saying, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe that I was at this place. I couldn't really believe that. So by writing, it healed. It helped to heal. So whatever else people do, they play cricket, they sew, they knit, they play video games, whatever you do that can help to distract you and that can be therapeutic. But it's music. Music is one of the things that the professionals they have advised that you listen to upbeat music and so on. Whatever it is that can help you. So for me, that writing was something that was advised. I was advised by the doctor.
So you were able to see your. Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying I'm glad I did. It is completed. It's completed and everything. So it's just a matter now of me finding a way that I can be able to get it out there, so that hopefully people can see my story and see how useful it can be.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be very useful because people would be, interested in reading about somebody's own personal experience. And in writing, as you said, it was a healing process for you, and you were able to see yourself again by writing, you know. So at some point in time, everybody, we go through things that shake us emotionally. And these are some of the things that you would have experienced that really shook you emotionally to be at that point of being the lowest. When we're at that point, what would you tell that person when they're at that lowest point, when they've been so shaken emotionally?
Don't give up. It is not the end. That is not the end. There's the old cliche or metaphor, whichever you want to call it, of the toad that always thought that the sky was brown. This toad believed that the sky was brown for many years. And then one day somebody walked on the beach and stomped their toe on a coconut shell. And the shell removed and the toad was there and he saw the sky different. It wasn't brown. It was blue with clouds and all of that. He was living in that coconut shell. And that coconut shell is metaphoric of our dark phase that we go through. And I'm saying that is not the end. There's much more to it. Fight. One part of my book, I use the word fight so many times. I just say fight. Keep fighting. Do not give up. From the time you give up, and some of us would have given up at times, but those who've given up would have realized at some point and would have continued, that is, would have realized that you cannot stop fighting. Don't give up. Where you are is not the end. Take comfort. And for those who are listening or looking at this, take comfort that despite you lying on that couch or wherever you lie and you are so unmotivated and whatever, and you feel that there is nothing else that matters, I'm saying take comfort that that is not the end. There's much more to that. That is not the end. That could be the beginning of a new beginning of a new you in trying to find that strength. And I want to emphasize that. Find strength to find the strength to get strength. Hold on to that strength. Hold on to the hope. Don't give up. We don't live, the sky is not brown. So we can kick that coconut shell away and there can be a whole new opening.
I just want to ask you one more thing about Guyana's health system we have. I know there are lots of efforts that was happening coming back from Dr. Ramsami's time and so forth with suicide. Um, and I know you would have reached out and you would have gotten help from overseas. What can we do better in Guyana to improve our situation, to know that people can have more confidence in our system?
I'll tell you a story, which is very ironic because just after the election in 2015, I was always with the IAC and we've been trying to do a lot of work for suicide prevention to the point where we would have advocated that suicide becomes a national priority by an act of parliament. That was our thinking at the time because we believe by passing it through parliament, there would have been resources would have had to be made available to be able to help the effort. In my view, at that time, I always thought that there was some kind of a mechanism that if someone like me was on the other end of the line and you're going, that you could pick up the phone and call some people and so on. But after the election, I was asked to be part of a group that help prisoners and be able to help people who may have suicidal tendencies and depressed and so on. But then I asked, who are they talking to? Are they talking to somebody who's qualified medically, a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever? And the answer was no. They were talking to people, volunteers, really dedicated people. And what they have was some training, but they had a commitment to help others. But to make the clinical diagnosis, I was a bit shocked at that time that we didn't have that kind of expertise. I could be wrong, but at least within my sphere, I was convinced that there wasn't that kind of medical expert. And more so when I reached out to that person who got me help overseas was simply because he also felt that the clinical diagnosis or persons with that kind of skills um, were very, very limited, and hence the overseas. I'm happy to see that with time, because when I was in hospital in COVID and depression started to take over, the doctors again picked it up. I told them, and they were able to get two persons to work with me through the telephone, right? So I didn't allow it, they didn't allow it to slip, right? So I'm happy to know now that we have people, not one, more than one person, who can be able to help in a more scientific and clinical way. So I think the first thing to do is to ensure that we build that infrastructure across, but more so, Jenny, we have to be able to build a belief system in people. We have to build confidence in people that when you are going through these things, that when you reach out, you're reaching out to people in confidence. I'm not saying who are there are not confidential. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying from the mindsets of those who are affected, they must be convinced that if I'm talking to Jenny and Jenny is a person, I know I could go there, tell her all my troubles, and it will be between Jenny and myself. Remember, we live in a very small society too. You know what happened at some point during the HIV, projects and whatever, and there
Yes.
was concerns about confidentiality and all those kinds of stuff. So that also has to be put in place to be able to build that mindset. But importantly too, Jenny, one of the things that we don't sometimes factor in is our culture and how our culture can in some instances influence certain aspects of our life. You use the word taboos, that create taboos around them. They're, in many instances, they are linked to a cultural belief. You understand about domestic violence. One particular ethnic group will try to keep it secret in the family. Tell the girl to bear up and whatever is your husband. You can bring shame if you. So all of that, but it's changing. And it's a good thing that it's changing. There are places that people can get help. So, in the same thing with mental health, is that we have to have the medical infrastructure to deal with it, not just in Georgetown, but basically around the country. And two, to have an educational program that can be able to instill a sense of confidence in people, to motivate people. And three, I believe organizations, social organizations like places of worship, clubs, workplaces, and so on, should have some kind of, whether you want to call it a policy or a protocol or whatever, but to have some kind of, even in the schools, because there are many children who are depressed, right? Even in the schools, to be able to spot these things and have interventions made. So it has to be a holistic approach. But we can start at some point and build as we go along, But at the end of the day, it comes down to people feeling that sense of confidence, but more so that they can be motivated, they can find that strength to seek that help. And when they seek the help has to be what is acceptable and what is necessary and relevant in dealing with the issues. If not, you can have people losing confidence. Why should I go? When I go, nothing happened, and that kind of stuff. So it takes a holistic approach.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think it's very important what you said, that That's a very good, insightful comment that we need to have a holistic, across the board approach, all the different facets, especially in the school system, the social workers and these it should be more employed and placed and, even in the place of worship, have those leaders trained and so forth to pick up certain warning signs and to even do some sort of counseling and so forth. It's highly needed. So you mentioned that during COVID, you were again having thoughts and so forth coming back and not feeling, 100% yourself. How are you feeling now in the healing? What would you say? Well, how would you say you're feeling now?
I'm thankful that I feel I'm in a much better place. I'll be honest with you, I haven't gotten it over 100% because Dr. Anthony was telling me the other day about long COVID and the effects of long COVID. And I was telling him, he asked me the same question you asked me, how am I doing? And I explained to him certain things, and he said, well, what I'm saying is playing right into the playbook of what long COVID is. Not COVID related, not COVID per se, the COVID virus syndrome, but what it based on your underlying conditions or condition, how your body will take time to heal and get back. So from that physical standpoint, I'm not 100%, but that contributes because I'm thinking about that. I knew how I used to be before. I knew there are some limitations now. So
Mhm.
that adds up in a way that I still do worry. I still, when I look at my children, I worry the way I feel, how long will it last and so on. So to say that I'm totally healed will be totally inaccurate, but I'm in a much, much better place. And I think this is all part of the process. It's not an overnight process. It's part of the process, and I'm hopeful that, and I feel more confident now that at some point I can be able to say, "Yeah, you know what? It's over." Meaning the illness.
Yeah. Yeah, I do hope so too, Niaz, because it's not easy, Every day we have choices, we have battles that we're fighting, and these things. But you have really demonstrated that you are a fighter because it's since 4 years ago, and you're here, and so really you have really demonstrated that you have fought this, and you're here, and I don't think anything can shake you that again now. So it's really good that that you're in that process of healing, and as you said in your book, coming back. So I'm really happy to talk to you and for you to share your story with viewers, because as we said before, we never know who we can impact. So I really want to commend your courage for coming out, especially in our society. We don't really talk about these things.
Well, I have to thank you, Jenny. You've given me a platform, and in as much as I have a story to tell, we have to have platforms to tell them. Platforms that are effective and that people can access. And you've given me this platform, and I'm thankful. And I do hope that even if one person is helped by looking at your program, and I want to commend you for the initiative as well, not because I am on, but the fact that you're engaging people on various issues, you're keeping us connected to the diaspora. I want to thank you, and thank you for giving me this platform. And for those who in any way would be influenced in a positive way, I'll be so happy in my heart to know that my story could be a new beginning for them. Thank you.
Yeah, Niaz, thank you so much, and I wish you all the best in all your future endeavors. And I'm gonna keep with me, what the doctor told you, all the children, the 5 children, plus your parents, your wife, and your 7 children actually. These are all reasons, and these are the things that we have to think about every day as we wake up. That I have so much to be thankful for, so much to be grateful for, so much to live for. And as you talked about with the birds and the sky and the stars and so forth, that these are all reasons why we're here. And we're here for a purpose, and you're here for a purpose, and your purpose is not over. And you're going to realize so much more in life as the years come, and you're going to see the real reason you're here, and your story is not over.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Thanks so much.